Welcome to the Motherhood Reimagined podcast, where we celebrate all paths to motherhood. I'm your host, Sarah Kowalski. Whether you're contemplating becoming a single mother, trying to be one, or already raising kids, this is the place for inspirational stories, expert advice, and informative guides celebrating those who didn't follow the rules as they share the heartache and joys of their paths. Be informed, be inspired, because you do not need to feel alone. I'm here with Stacy, and I'm really excited to hear about her journey to motherhood, which sounds like it had quite a few twists and turns and ups and downs. So thanks for being here with me, Stacy.
Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. So as a child, can you tell me a little bit about sort of what you expected for your life and what you expected in terms of whether you wanted to be a mother or how you thought you might become a mother?
Yeah. So, it's funny because I'm not sure I did a whole lot of thinking about, what adulthood would look like when I was a kid. I definitely imagined a lot of really romantic and idealistic things. They usually had a partner in them. They always had a partner in them. I definitely didn't think I would be, single. They usually had kids in them, but I wasn't super, I guess the maternal drive didn't activate in me until I was later. So maybe around my late 20s, early 30s, that I really had the very strong drive to become a mother. Before that, I was happy being an aunt and, loved kids, but just, had not really connected those dots to like my own vision for motherhood.
Right. And can you describe briefly your path to motherhood as sort of the overview summary for us?
So I think age is kind of an important relevant factor to this. I started trying when I was maybe 34 or 35. I kind of woke up one day and I was fresh out of the relationship and realizing like suddenly the biological clock reality was hitting me. And, so I kind of got there quickly, got to the place of trying quickly. So the whole journey took me 8 years. I did about 2 or 3 years of, getting pregnant, miscarrying, and not really getting to the bottom of why, going to a few different specialists. And finally, after a little bit after before my second to last miscarriage, I started to feel pretty hopeless about, having my own children biologically, and started to explore other options, mainly because the process of miscarrying was so gruesome and brutal that I just felt like I couldn't face it again, So I was kind of looking for other ways to become a mother. But I did have, for a long time, a strong attachment to having a biological child. So first I tried to explore IVF, and then I tried exploring surrogacy. And then at some point I, had the question pop up into my head, do you want to be a biological mother or do you want to be a mother? And the answer to that was a resounding, I want to be a mother. So I started pursuing adoption and, donor situations like donor embryos. So that all happened for a few years. And then I tried one more time with my own body, and that miscarriage resulted in me needing to have an emergency hysterectomy.
Oh my gosh.
It sounds more dramatic than it was. I mean, it was pretty awful, but it wasn't like it was a long progression of basically I don't want to get too graphic, so I'll just, I'm just going to leave it at that I had an emergency hysterectomy and let people imagine the details. So after that, I told the surgeon going into that surgery, spare my ovaries if you can. And I said, take them if you need to take them, but please leave them if you can. So he ended up able to leave them. I was very happy to hear that. And the absolute first day post-op that I could, you have to wait for 6 weeks and get a clearance. The very first day that I could, I made an appointment with an IVF doctor to retrieve my eggs. And I did 2 retrievals and stored up a grand total of, I think, 20 embryos, sorry. And then I worked with surrogates. They had miscarriages, and then they had failures, and we did more transfers. And then I ran out of money, so I took a time out and went back to pursuing adoption. I mean, I'm sorry, it's a convoluted story, but I got to tell the whole thing. So went back to adoption, got matched up with a birth family, thought that I had finally found my baby. And then 3 days before the baby was born, the birth family bailed out of the arrangement. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I need to backtrack because before that happened, I decided to pursue surrogacy, traditional surrogacy, which is where the carrier is also the egg donor.
Okay.
And she got pregnant and I supported her for an entire year and paid her for an entire year and had a baby shower. And 3 weeks before the baby was born, she disappeared. Text messaged me that she was keeping the baby and disappeared.
Oh my gosh.
So I had a lot of heartbreaks. And I was really, really at the end of the road thinking I just couldn't do this anymore. I was actually seriously considering how could I make my life joyful without children.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then I had the failed adoption, and I took a solid break for about 6 months of just trying to regroup and figure out what I wanted to do, and did a support group, and kind of tried to get my head screwed back on straight. And then just it seemed like magic. Things came together, and I hate to say that because I don't want to give anyone the impression that it was magic. It was 8 years of grueling work, but finally, in this magical moment, things came together. And on the same day, I got a call that my surrogate was pregnant, and I got a call from a bio mom who had chosen me to adopt her baby.
Wow. Oh, so you were doing both at the same time.
I wasn't actively pursuing adoption. It like fell in my lap.
Wow.
It was just it was crazy how it happened.
Wow.
And it happened on the same day. So I found out on the same day after 8 years that I had two babies coming. And by the way, I had been jilted by a surrogate, and I had been bailed out on by birth parents, and I had had many miscarriages. So you can understand why I didn't believe any of this was going to come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was going to end up with neither baby, and I ended up with both.
Wow. And how far apart from each other did they both arrive into your life?
They're 6 months and 10 days apart.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
It is.
Wow. Wow. Well, I don't think I even need to ask, but maybe if there's something that you want to add about how that path like differed from what you pictured throughout your life, I feel like it's sort of self-explanatory.
Yeah. Well, the ironic thing is when I first decided to get pregnant, I got pregnant the very first try. So I had 8 weeks before I knew that I was miscarrying of sort of this bliss of ignorance of thinking that this was going to sort of go according to plan. I was going to get pregnant the first time I tried. Everything was going to be smooth sailing. Like I never imagined in a million years that like any of this. I didn't imagine. I mean, where do I begin? I didn't imagine that I was going to do this alone. I didn't imagine that I was going to have any trouble. I didn't imagine I was going to have losses, that I was going to spend a small fortune becoming a mother, that I was going to need a village to make two babies. I mean, everything about my story was just, it defied everything I had envisioned for myself. And I know that I'm a particularly stubborn and tenacious person. So that's obviously going to be part of like the equation for me. But the other thing that it stuck out for me is the harder it was, and the more like the universe told me that I couldn't, the more I knew that I absolutely couldn't accept no as an answer. And for me, that was a really important thing to share because it crystallized for me how important it was, like how much I really wanted it.
Yeah, because I can imagine a lot of people. I mean, I almost gave up a couple of times, and I think the question comes for people all the time. Like, how do you find the strength to keep going when it's just going so horribly wrong? And how do you stay connected to that, intense desire for a baby to keep you motivated and keep going?
Which is really weird because people would ask me that, and my automatic and emphatic response is, how could I possibly give up? Like, people would say, how do you keep hope? If you give up hope, what do you have? Like, I couldn't imagine giving up because, that would be like giving up hope. I mean, if you don't have hope, what do you have? I don't know. For me, it was like, the battle would have been letting go and walking away. Because for me, like, it wasn't a matter of maintaining connection with that desire. I couldn't break it.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it felt like it was so exhausting. I just didn't know if I had the strength to keep going. But then I had to sort of weigh the pain of not being a mother against the pain of trying. And for me, the pain of not being a mother was greater. And so I had, even though it was so incredibly painful to go through the process, I like pushed myself to do that. And I guess that's really where you kind of have to come out, is like measuring, can you cope? Does the pain of not being a mother feel better or worse than the heartache of trying?
Exactly. So much of what you said just so strongly resonated. And I just wanted to add from like, I guess you might call it a bit of insanity because like, it was never, it took me 8 years to get to the point where maybe 7 years before I even started to question whether I had the strength to keep going. And I'm not going to say that reflects anything about me, like my personal strength. I don't think it does. I think it just shows you the drive, when you feel that call to be a mother, the drive is so strong, that maybe you take breaks. I personally couldn't take breaks because it's just not my nature. But even if you take breaks, I feel like, that drive just comes back. If it's there, it just keeps coming back,
Yeah. Yeah. And what would you say what did you need to let go of in order to embrace, I guess, this path to motherhood and sort of let go of the sort of biological connection and just in general, like a completely different path than you expected?
So the first thing I want to say about that is that for me, it was a surprise for me to realize that the letting go and the getting, like moving to the new place of like reimagining and accepting, to me, it didn't happen once. It had to happen continually during the trying period. Like I felt like I was accepting and then all over again having to re-accept and then all over again having to re-accept. Like, the idea of letting go of not being a biological mother was really hard for me. I mean, I fought against it. Every time I thought I was there, I would fight against it again. It just was a sort of ongoing struggle. I knew I could love a child that wasn't biologically mine. I absolutely knew that. But I also didn't want to be left out of experiencing the biological motherhood. So it was like, for me, I kind of wanted both. It wasn't that I thought one would be better than the other. It was just, I felt like there was this, maybe it's just a primal thing. I don't know. So I had to so I would say probably about 3 full cycles of like working through the grief of, okay, I'm not going to experience biological motherhood, but I still want to be a mother. And then having to sort of work through that grief again. I think I probably did like 3 cycles of that over the course of a couple of years. In the end, I had a kind of a watershed moment, and it sounds super cheesy, but it was like really what transformed my thinking. I had a dog, and he was my best friend for 15 years. And my constant companion. And he used to do this thing. He would wake me up at night by hovering his face over mine. If he wanted something, he would just hover his face over mine until I sensed him there and woke up, And I remember I would always do this thing where I would give him a little snuggle before I go back to sleep. And I remember thinking, wow, like I snuggled him once, it was 3 a.m. and he woke me up and I was snuggling him and smelling him. And I don't know if you have a dog or if you've ever had a dog, but their smell, you start to love their smell, and I was snuggling my dog and smelling him and going, I love this dog so much. And in that moment, I thought, if I can love this animal who's not even my species so much that I can, like, in the middle of the night when he wakes me up, I'm snuggling him and inhaling his smell and reveling in that, then I can certainly love a child that's not from my own body.
Yeah, I feel like I had I have 2 dogs, and I feel like they really helped me sort of grapple with the non-biological thing too, because I was like, oh, right, like I love these dogs so much, and I didn't get them as puppies. They were both rescues. And yeah, I was like, oh, okay. And then I also was holding, like I went to a friend's house and I was holding her baby, and it was like a week or maybe 2 weeks old. And she went to the bathroom. And I was just like, you know what? If for some reason, she came out of the bathroom and said, you need to take my baby home and take care of it. Like, I was so mesmerized by this baby that I was like, oh my God, I would love any baby. It would not matter.
Exactly. No, it's amazing. It's such a strange artificial barrier. And once you get past that artificial barrier, it's like you wonder what you struggled with for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely agree. So what would you say? I think it's really fascinating for people to hear, well, just what made you, I guess, how did you manage to let go of that desire for the biological, as well as what's your perspective now, or how would you sort of describe that love that seems like so obvious after you have had a baby that's not biologically yours?
Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, here's the punchline. One of my children is biologically mine. And I didn't think that was going to happen. I was down to my last 3 embryos, and I had already arranged donor embryos. I had fully accepted that these embryos were not going to come to anything. And that's when that happened. So it's just a really interesting turn of events, because I finally got to the place where I was okay with the fact that I wasn't going to be a biological mother, but I ended up getting to have that anyway. But what got me to that okay place was exactly like you described, of the feeling of holding a baby and wanting to, I remember a friend had a baby and I was holding it, and I wasn't imagining if my friend came out of the bathroom. I had this moment where I had this intense impulse to just run.
Well, I have to be honest. I feel like that's probably what I felt like, was like, oh my God, I could just run out the door right now.
I'm just going to run with this baby and keep it. It was so intense, So I don't know. Like I said, for me, I don't feel like I had a singular moment. I just, over time, and I took a mindfulness, infertility mindfulness support group kind of class thing. And the facilitator of that class became, a pretty dear person to me. And at one point we were having this discussion, and she just put it to me so plainly. She said, Stacy, do you want to be a biological mother, or do you want to be a mother? You know what I mean? And the answer was, I want to be a mom.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that other thing is a nice, icing on the cake, but I just wanted to be a mom.
Yeah. And can you speak to any differences between your experience with your two kids? How old are they now?
So the older one is Aliana, and she's the adopted one, and she's 4 years and 5 months.
Okay.
And Sila is the younger one, and she's 3 years and 10 months or 11 months. So one is about to turn 4, and one turned 4 a while ago.
Daughters, right?
Yeah, they're both girls. So I don't know if birth order has any impact on these things, but I think it is, in my case, meaningful to note that my adopted daughter came first.
Mm-hmm.
I had 6 months alone with her before my other daughter came. And that was such a magical, special time to just, first time motherhood, my daughter finally here after 8 years. And my love for her was so fierce that it was just like overtook me. And like, I just over and over again kept thinking, how do people not understand that adoption is just, how could they not understand how real this is, how meaningful it is? Like, I was so overcome with how very, very much I was her mother. And how, like, suddenly I'm noticing that people are using things like adoptive mother as, qualifiers, and, kind of using adoption to sort of indicate this, like, less than totally 100% mother relationship. Like, I don't know if you've noticed that, but it kind of comes up in mass media all the time. They, whenever they refer to, like, children of famous people that are adopted, they always say they're adopted children, as if that somehow mitigates their connection. And, like, suddenly I became very aware of, or maybe it was just my perception, but I believed I became very aware of people lessening the significance of our connection because of the fact that it was adoption. And all I kept feeling was, oh my God, she is my everything. I would die for this baby. I would do anything for this baby. And I was just so completely stunned by, like, just how much I loved her. I was completely stunned by that. And I knew that I would love her, but I just didn't know that I wouldn't feel any of those qualifiers. None of them felt relevant at all. I wish I had better words to describe it, but, of course, it's an open adoption, and I have a great relationship with her bio parents. But this was a journey between me and her, and everything else just faded away. And there was no hesitation, and there was no mitigation of my feelings. It was 1,000%. So then, second baby came along, and actually, my family, my sister and her husband and their kids lived next door to me, and I got a lot of grief because in the beginning, I had a little bit of a hard time making room for both babies. I felt like I basically was having a hard time giving the new baby as much attention as I was giving Eliana, the older baby. And I think there was just all kinds of weird guilt about having another baby join the family so soon and feeling like I was taking something away from Eliana. I don't know. It was very confusing, but it resulted in a really profound struggle for the first year to feel as bonded to Sila as I felt to Ellie. And that really threw everybody took everyone by surprise. My family, everybody was really thrown by this because they had sort of assumed that I would love my biological daughter so much more, that the bond would be, like, so inexplicable. And I love them now. They're 100% equal in my heart. Absolutely. And even then they were equal as far as the depth of my love. I just had a hard time putting Eliana down long enough to bond with Sila.
Well, they're at an age when they needed so much of your attention. I can't even imagine having two babies that young and having different needs. Like, I can't even fathom. So I can imagine that it would be a struggle in some way, shape, or form.
It was, and I felt a lot of, like I said, I think I struggled with guilt. Like I was putting her aside too soon, you know what I mean? And so I struggled with finding that balance. And I did eventually find it. One of the things that really helped me was baby wearing. So whichever one I wasn't, like, I could wear one of them and, like, hold the other one, or, like, it just gave me the ability to kind of physically bond with one while I was emotionally bonding with the other, or something like that. So, that helped out a lot. But yeah, like, it was a surprising thing because I bought into the notion that surely I would have some extra, special primal link to my biological daughter. But I don't. I really, truly, I cannot possibly, it's, who could ever, but I have seen families where biological children have been treated more favorably than adopted children. So it does happen. But in
Mm-hmm.
my heart, in my mind, like there's absolutely zero difference in the ferocity of my devotion for them.
Mm.
I could never pick.
Wow. Yeah, it's so great. I mean, it makes sense to me as a mother, but I still think it's so great for people to hear that, especially people who are on the path and struggling.
Yeah.
I just think people, you can't hear it enough times because I think it's so hard to grapple with when you're on the other, before you're actually become a mother and have that connection.
I totally agree, which is one of the reasons why I always bring up the fact that I'm a biological mother and an adoptive mother,
Hmm.
because I love to use that and really testify to people how much I love them equally. Because people love to tell adoptive parents that they don't really know what they're talking about, because they haven't experienced. I've experienced both,
Hmm.
and I can tell you that they're equal.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted to interview you because it's just such an it's very awesome that you can make that comparison and sort of definitively tell people, like, no, really. Um, so, yes, thank you. And do you have any regrets about your path or how you became a mother in any way?
Well, the one thing that okay, so I don't regret anything about being my two daughters' mother. But if I would have met myself at the age of 35 and known the future, I would have told myself to relax, because it was a hard and painful and exhausting journey. And I made it harder than it needed to be because I didn't allow myself to heal in between heartbreaks. I didn't have a lot of faith that I would have a happy ending. So I never let up the pursuit. And I'm not saying I didn't live my life, because I did. I still had plenty of fun, but I just found that it was a bit eclipsed. And I kind of look back and I feel like I lost a few years there.
Mm,
And I'm kind of regretful about that, because the journey was going to happen whether I was ultra focused on it or not. It was going to be that way. However, the outcome was going to be, was going to be. And if I had known that it was going to take me 8 years and I was going to experience these heartbreaks, but eventually I was going to get there, I believe I would have been able to, give in and go with the river, so to speak, ride with the river, so to speak, rather than, fighting against it so much. And maybe that would have allowed me to have a better quality of life in those years in between. That's the biggest regret that I have. Infertility is such a dark tunnel, and it's really, really easy to get swept up in that dark tunnel and stay there for, until you finally get the only cure, as far as I'm concerned, the only cure is to finally have a kid.
hmm.
And so until you finally find your recipe for the cure, you're just in this dark tunnel of despair, and it's just so much pain. But the only thing worse than the pain, in my opinion, is the not knowing when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, if it's going to happen. And I think if I had just had a little bit more faith, then maybe I wouldn't have been quite so miserable.
Yeah, it's so tricky. I sort of feel like no matter what, when you're in it, like I feel like I would have given up certain paths sooner, maybe. Like I fought for a biological kid as well, and I felt like I was like banging my head against a wall trying to make that happen. And in hindsight, I'm like, why did I fight? I should have just gone straight to egg donor.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, it's so hard to put the thing that you're focused on down. Like, yeah, it's when you're in it, it's really hard and it feels like a dark tunnel. I like that analogy a lot.
When you're in it and you don't know yet how good it's going to feel to hold that child that's your child. And so you're not there yet. You just can't imagine, that there's a way out of that tunnel, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. So you feel like you wish you had been, it sounded like at one point you said you wish you had taken some breaks between to sort of grieve the heartache and or been sort of just more not taking it so hard at the time.
Yeah. What that would have looked like, I don't know. It already took me 8 years. If I would have taken breaks, what would that have meant? Would that have meant that it would have taken longer? Maybe no matter what I did, it was going to take exactly 8 years. And, maybe I could have lightened up on myself a little bit. Who knows, right?
Hmm.
But the reason that I especially say that is because, there is a really interesting backlash that happens when you finally become a mother after you've been fighting really hard to become a mother. At least for me, I felt a lot of, I guess, what you could call PTSD.
Hmm.
And that, if you've been fighting to become a mother for 8 years and then you're having any issues about being a mother, do not tell people, because they will not be sympathetic. I was having a hard time in the beginning. I had run myself so into the ground in every possible way, financially, logistically, professionally, personally, health wise, weight wise. I had just pillaged every single resource, and I was left empty. And then I was supposed to mother two children. And, I was at my lowest moment when I was finally blessed. And I'm so grateful for that blessing. But I was, it was like running a marathon and then being told you have to run another marathon.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine how intense that was for you. I mean, yeah. And I agree that I think we have to give permission to all moms to have an adjustment period. I mean, it's such a huge adjustment becoming a mother, no matter how hard you fought for it or tried for it. But
exactly.
I think, yeah, that's a topic for another day, probably. So what's the most surprising thing about your path and how things turned out to you?
Okay, so this is going to sound weird, but I was 43, I think, when I became a mother, or 44. But, I had lots of years to form lots of opinions. And I love this meme I see on Facebook sometimes. Like, I was a really, really great mother before I had kids. Like, it definitely disabused me of a lot of illusions I had about so many things. But the one that was most earth shattering to me, and I know that I'm sorry that this is going to come across as negative, but I do think it's an important thing to consider and really get closure within yourself go into with eyes open, I guess is a better way of putting it. But my decision to be a single mother by choice, that decision on a political, socio, cultural, like on every level that you could measure it against, I was 100% okay with a woman making that choice. I would fight for it. I would argue anyone to the ground over it. As far as I was concerned, that was everybody's right. But then when my children came and they were actually people with like identities and lives and journeys that weren't mine, I have felt guilt about making the decision to preclude a father from their lives. And I was okay with that when they were hypothetical people, but it's harder to stomach that when they're actually people that you know and love and are supposed to be responsible for.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I made a decision for them that I never really thought about I guess I thought about it from their perspective, but it's just so different when they're here and they're your children and they're people of their own. That's the thing that's really hard is that I don't know that it really hits you until you're a mom, that your children are their own. They are here for their own journey.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They're not here for your journey. They're here for their own journey.
Right. Yeah. And so would you do anything differently based on that feeling now?
No, I did preserve the open adoption with regard to Eliana, and I did choose an ID release donor for Sela, and both of those were very, very important to me even before. So I don't know that I could have done anything different per se, but it's the thing that surprises me the most. Just having to live with the emotional reality of watching them process a world where so many other kids have daddies and they don't.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, that's a great perspective to hear. I don't feel that way, but I completely respect that. I see places where that comes up for sure, where my son is asking for a dad. And of course, it's heartbreaking, but I also believe he's going to be okay.
Exactly. I'm sure they're going to be fine. And I wouldn't change anything. Like, do not get me wrong. I would still do what I've done, but now I've got to answer to them. If they come to me and have a problem, I've got to answer to them for it, and that's like, and they've started to talk about daddies, they've started to ask me questions. And yesterday I flat out asked them, are you sad that you don't have a daddy? And they said, yeah, we are.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first time they've ever owned it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think Aiden, my son, would like a dad. And he tells me that, and he asks like, how come he doesn't have one? And he believes that lots of different people are his dad. And
mine do that too. It's so funny when they inform me who their dad is.
Uh-huh. Right. You're like, oh, okay. I mean, luckily we have a community of incredibly diverse families. So he knows that there's some kids that have two dads and some kids that have two moms and some kids that have like a baba and a mom or a dad, or, like we have a lot of even transgendered families around us. So we have such a wealth so he doesn't feel like it's necessarily that he's curious why some kids get dads because it seems like a cool thing to him. But I don't think that he understands it as like a realm of possibilities of these are the types of families, which is pretty great. But I think that does come from being around so many different types of families around us.
Right. And that's, which brings up the fact that you get to live in the city, I believe, and I'm living in the suburbs. And I mean, I live in the same area that you live in, but it's, when they go to preschool every day, I really thought that even here, because I mean, this is Silicon Valley, I thought for sure that they would be seeing more different types of families. But you know what? At preschool so far, it's been a lot of moms and dads.
Interesting. Yeah. Our preschool I'm in the East Bay, but our preschool tries to match like with like. So if there's a family like with a trans parent, then they find another family with that. And then there's two families with single moms, and there's two families with two moms, two kids that are African American, two kids that are, so they try and do same, but that's a very conscious choice of our preschool. And I have heard from other people that they don't have that diversity of family that my preschool does. But something for people to think about, to sort of ask the questions at the preschools. And I think, because I think it does help him a lot.
Definitely. And I mean, I'm very connected with the community of single mothers by choice. And they're not all white either. There's a nice, healthy, representation there. And we get together all the time. And so they know that there's lots of other single mom families. But, school is such a dominating part of their day.
Mm-hmm.
Of all of the questions I asked before I chose that school, that was not one of them.
Right.
Who knew?
Yeah, it is an important one, because I have heard other people say like, oh, our school is, even people in the Bay Area, that like, oh, their school's not, there isn't that diversity of family, and that it does affect them. It's true. So what advice would you give someone if they were struggling to become a mother, or they were looking at like a different path than what they had assumed and dreamed of?
Well, I mean, my favorite thing to tell people, because I'm very lucky because of my ridiculously convoluted and long story. I actually go back and speak at the infertility workshops, and like I'm sort of like an inspirational, you can do it speaker.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's really nice to do that, because I because of how many people I benefited from along the way that did that for me. But the one thing that I try to tell people is, just get that baby on the way, and then work out the emotions later. Because if you're pregnant, you got 9 months to work out the emotions. If you're waiting to be matched for an adoption, you have who knows how long to work out your emotions. As far as I'm concerned, if you know in your heart of hearts that you want to be a parent, just don't let grass grow. Just because I feel like your heart goes first and your mind follows. And if your heart knows it wants to be there, your mind will get on board. I don't completely understand the people that spend year after year toiling about whether or not to move forward, because I knew that was the part that I would just get there when I had to get there. You know what I mean? For me, once I knew in my heart that I wanted that, that's all that I needed to know, that the rest would follow. So a leap of faith, you know what I mean? Just taking the leap and knowing that you're not going to be disappointed. You know what I mean? It might be hard, and it is hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a hard path. But you're never going to regret it. You're never going to be disappointed by it. For every hardship, there's twice as much love and joy. Mm-hmm. And you find your way. You find your way to build your your village. You find, I know women who have married after the fact. I know women who have, banded together and created intentional sort of extended families. I feel like, you make the life that you want. You can keep making the life that you want. It's not like you make this decision and then no decision follows it. You make a decision and then you make other decisions to make it work for you and to reflect what you like and what's important to you. So it's like it's like a work in progress,
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. You're speaking mainly to the single mom by choice part of the equation, and anything in terms of advice you'd give to women who are in the thick of trying to get pregnant and not succeeding at many different crossroads that you could be at. Any advice?
Yeah, finding other support from people who actually are experiencing it, and from professionals who understand how to help you through it. I feel like too many women suffer alone. And I feel like this is one area where making friends and connections and community really gets you through it. And having faith and knowing that if you're open to all the different paths, it's not if, it's when. Mm-hmm. To me, that was probably the one thing I wish I knew. It's not if, it's when. Mm-hmm. And if you can really believe that and embrace it, and then know that love and happiness are waiting for you, that to maybe let go of, the preconceived notions, let go of the vision of how you thought it was going to be. I love you're calling it reimagining. That's exactly what you need to do. But reimagining, it does come with grieving. There's no doubt about it. But what it also comes with is so much potential.
Yeah. And what would you describe as that potential?
Like, who knows? I never would have in a million years believed that this would be how motherhood would look for me. I would never have believed you that I would have gotten 2 calls in one day after 8 years and that my children would come to me this way. I mean, I just never would have predicted it. And I never would have believed that this would be my recipe for happiness. But, once you open your heart and really do believe that all paths to motherhood are going to result in the same beautiful experience, different. I mean, not the same. That's Stacy. I got to be careful with my words. They're all going to result in an equally meaningful and life-changing experience. So you don't have to hold on so tightly to what you thought was going to happen. I so hate the cliche when one door closes, another one opens kind of thing, But think about every time you've ever lost or left a job and wondered what on earth was waiting next for you. And then the next job was just, you just never could have imagined when you signed on the dotted line that job was going to be so new and exciting and have so many potential, opportunities to learn and grow. Every time you've gone to school and, whenever you go through a door and you go on a new adventure, you just have absolutely no idea what's waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that better than knowing exactly what's waiting for you?
Yes, I agree, but it's so hard. I think it's really hard to explain to people. I think women have an innate desire to be a mother and they know that they want to be, but you really can't explain what it's like at all.
No.
And so it's so hard to explain to someone why it just doesn't matter whether they're biological or that this completely different path is evolving. And I think that's part of the tricky part of it because it is so indescribable, the bond of a mother and child.
Maybe then, what, this just occurred to me, but I wish I would have thought of it, is maybe spend some time with families that were created different ways and see it with your own eyes and your own heart that it doesn't make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I went and visited a friend who used an egg donor. She was the only person I knew of that had used an egg donor. And it really was a turning point for me as well. I think that the holding this other friend's baby and seeing this mom and her connection to her daughter and that everything seemed completely normal. I was like, oh, okay. It's exactly the same. And that was a really helpful thing for me to see.
It's really funny. And so I was in this group of, a cohort of, women that were all doing, infertility treatments at this one center. And we were all going to these weekly meetings with each other. And in the course of the years that we knew each other, each one took a slightly different path. You know what I mean? One woman did IUIs, one woman did IVF, one woman did egg donor, one woman did embryo donor, adoption. It really just ran the gamut because basically the class was about exploring your options and making the decision what option fit best for you and, getting through those feelings. But the really interesting thing is as women graduated from the class because they became mothers through these various different methods, it became so much more real to me. Oh my God, they're a mom now. Look at your baby. You know what I mean? They don't care anymore that that's a donor egg, or and I remember the first one in my group to do donor eggs. I remember when she first got pregnant, when she first, had her baby. I remember thinking, and there was this little voice in my head that said, but it's donor egg. It's not, is it the same? Do people know? Is she telling everybody? All of these thoughts were swirling around in my head about that. You know what? None of it mattered.
Yeah.
She was just ecstatic to have her son.
Mm-hmm. And so sort of on the same lines, in what ways has being a mother been different than you expected?
Well, it's harder than I thought it would be. It is it's a pride swallowing siege on a daily basis. I mean, it's hard. And that's definitely, and I know it's not hard for everybody. Maybe it's, everybody's wired a little differently, but I was a very independent, very career minded, I was not a domesticated person, so I'm still learning how to be domestic. It's not my strong suit. But you know what? I tell myself I can outsource that stuff. So, I have a really great nanny that helps me. So it's harder than I thought. And I think the thing that I joke, but the part that's hardest, the part that really, really, really surprised me is it's you never get to clock out.
Mm-hmm.
You're a mom 24/7. There's no me time. Even when there's me time, there's no me time. There's no respite. There's no break. There's no going back into your hole of selfishness. And that is a huge shift for someone who started later in life. I got a lot of time. I was very accustomed to putting my own needs first. So Like that was a really, really big surprise to me, like just how relentless it can be. But I'm saying that like it's a bad thing, but it's not. It's just what it is. It's just, it's all consuming. You know what I mean? But, the other side of that is like, it's magical. It's absolutely magical. And, it's absolutely worth it every single day. It's a labor of love.
Yeah. So specifically, what do you love most about being a mother? Or can you even articulate anything about what you love most about being a mother?
I love the fact that they trust me with all their hearts, like that they look to me and I'm the oracle. And and I mean, the sad part is that can be abused, but the beautiful, amazing thing about that is the level of trust that they have in you. And that blows me away every day. Like, when they look to me and ask me to like make sense, just the littlest things, like I had surgery recently and I had a scar on my neck, and every single morning, Mommy, is your neck feeling better? Is it feeling better today? They just care. Like their level of like trust and faith in you is such a privilege. It's just such an honor. And I love watching them learn like every new thing about life. Like every time they come up with a phrase and I wonder where on earth they heard that phrase. I can't believe I heard them utter that phrase. Are you kidding me? The other day when I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, what? Where did you get that? Like, it blows my mind. They're like these little people with, futures that are going to unfold. And I get to watch, I get a front row seat to like seeing their futures unfold. And so basically it just feels to me like a really amazing honor and privilege. And, that's the part I like best. I mean, I get the minutia is really, as far as I'm concerned, I know that there are women who are wired to love the minutia. That's not me. I don't love to make their lunches. I mean, I do, but it's not, I do it because it's part of the job. You know what I mean? That's not the part that gets me up in the morning. That's not the part that, makes me keep going forward. The thing that keeps just making me go forward is just, hearing them giggle, just hearing them laugh, and just a good belly laugh will sustain me for days. Just that kind of stuff is all I need from them. Watching them monitor after they've gone to bed and they're singing to themselves in bed. That's the kind of stuff that just slays me.
Yeah. Well, my next question was, what do you like least about being a mother? Which you sort of covered, but if you want to add anything else.
Housekeeping, laundry, I don't know, like all of, like okay. In a nutshell, like your house stays clean for exactly 5 minutes. That's it. So either you love to clean or you're okay living in constant disarray. I don't love to clean. So yeah. I have to accept living in constant disarray. The other thing I really don't love about motherhood, but is the worry. I worry so constantly about them, and I want the best for them, and I hold myself to too high a standard. And there's too much sanctimony going on around me, and I buy into it. And I, place way too much value on how unrealistic expectations of perfection. And, I unnecessarily torture myself about every little thing, every choice I'm making, and then just, and all these stupid, and part of that is we live in a world now where there's no such thing as right and wrong. That's a good thing and a bad thing, because there are so many different opinions and ways of life. That's a good thing. But the hard part about it is you have to choose one, and you have to be willing to defend it and stand by it. And, like I feel sometimes like the little quandaries in life drive me crazy. Like, do I argue with my daughter about brushing her hair, or do I let her go to school looking like a hobo? Like, what is the right choice? I don't know what the right choice is. And I torture myself over it because I wonder if this is going to someday going to dictate for them like an issue, okay, they have low self-esteem because they went to school with messy hair every day, So I do all this like total, I torture myself with all of these little things that I don't need to torture myself with,
I hear you. I feel exactly the same way. And finally, any other advice for other people or anything else you'd like to add?
I'm going to give advice that I need to take. Shut out the haters, and the naysayers, and even the ones that aren't really hating. Haters is the wrong word, because the ones that are most pernicious, in my opinion, are the ones that are technically your allies, that are really not your allies. And you feel in your gut that they're not your allies. You feel in your gut that they aren't really supporting your decision, and it undermines your confidence at every step of the way. Just ditch them. Just, why have those people in your life at any step of the journey? If you're choosing to be a single mother by choice, if you're battling infertility, if you don't know whether to do IVF or adoption, like there are so many paths, these branches off the path along the way. You have to make your choices. You have to follow your own voice and your own heart. And the worst is when you have the people whispering in your ear and well, I guess if you really want to do it that way, just all these little comments. And And I just think it shut them out. Just like, this is your life. You're the one that has to live with it. You're the one that has to live with the consequences of it.
Mm-hmm.
Those people whispering in your ear are not going to be there later. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but it's not their life. It's your life.
Right.
So I guess that's the one thing that I would really advise, because I still struggle. Like I just said, even as a mother, even now when they're here, I'm still letting people whisper in my ear, and people who are pretending to be my allies, who are really undermining my confidence. And, but that's something, one of the things I noticed going through infertility as a single woman is that you don't get a lot of sympathy from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Because like married couples get all the sympathy and like compassion, but single women just don't get any. It's weird, but it's just, there's no love, coming our way. There's some, but I mean, it's, society, the messaging doesn't really support it, So, you really feel like you're standing alone, and the last thing you need is anybody undermining that. So I say build supporters, build people who are cheering for you, and let them cheer you, let them help you.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I had never really thought about that single women aren't really supported in the infertility journey, but I think you're right. It's there very subtly in many ways.
Well, I had like my best friend also struggled with infertility, and she's married. And a couple of times she would make these comments that she had no idea what the subtext of those comments were. But her comment was, and I did everything by the book.
Mm.
Like, I followed the rules and I can't have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not even following the rules, So like, who should have sympathy for you?
Right. Oh man, that's pretty brutal. Yeah, I had some naysayers as well, and it's very true. But I also think that there's always going to be, and so you kind of have to, either just let them go in your life, or just let them have an opinion that's negative. And when I'm very open about telling people that I used an egg donor, and I know that it brings up a whole host of things. Being a single mom, using an egg donor, using double donor, like all sorts of people get sort of triggered in their own stuff and have all sorts of opinions. And it's definitely an important practice for me to sort of not get wrapped up into trying to convince them or change their opinions or have anything to do with it.
So you have to either shut them out or be strong enough in your own center, or both, because you get tested. You get tested so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very true. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I want to add like 500 more hours of advice, but I can't. So. Like, really, I want to have my own podcast. I can just talk all day long about all the ways that I can advise people.
Nice. Well, we can chat again sometime if you like, too.
Yeah, I just hang in there. Hang in there.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, well, awesome. Well, this was so great and so helpful. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you, actually. Any advice around sort of the process of adoption that you would, or process of surrogacy? Any details around either of those that you would tell people? Or is that just a whole other can of worms that we should talk about another time?
It really is. Both of those subjects are like a PhD in themselves.
Okay.
Which I'm happy to do another time. But but the one thing I will say is that social media is definitely your best advertising weapon for adoption. Like, that is how my baby came to me, with social media.
Meaning what? Like, you posted on like a Facebook group saying?
I actually created an adoption page.
Ah.
And I got testimonials from friends and family and made it public and talked about my story. And ironically, I deleted it. I don't know why. I wish I would have saved it to show people. But I asked people to share it. I made it global. I made it like accessible to all people. And I asked everyone I know to share it. And I put pictures of me and my family and the life that my children would have. And it was like the book that they usually make you make at an agency. I made that on Facebook.
Okay. Interesting.
And that's how the birth mom found me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. All right. That's wonderful advice for people.
Yeah. Leverage that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it makes me think we should just do another episode of talking about adoption, the adoption process and the surrogacy process, because I would love to get sort of the lowdown on both of those. And you obviously had bad experiences and good experiences with both of those processes. So
yeah, I feel like I'm in a unique position.
Mm-hmm. You are, definitely.
And I'm happy to do it because, I don't do this for vanity. Like, I have no idea if this is going to, if I'm going to come across sounding like insane or whatever. But to me, this is really, truly a commitment that I've made to be a voice and to be an advocate and to be paying it forward as best I can. Because I cannot tell you how many people along my journey were little angels that just, gave me a little lifeline when I needed it. And I want to just do whatever I can to help others.
Awesome. Okay. Well, then we'll make a plan and we'll do it. So I want to thank you so much for joining us and for all the insight and inspiration you've given us and the listeners today. And I look forward to speaking with you again. I'm so excited to announce the upcoming launch of Motherhood Reimagined Tribe. Tribe is the essential resource for single motherhood. So whether you're contemplating becoming a single mother, trying to conceive, or raising donor-conceived children, then Motherhood Reimagined Tribe can help you embrace your own unique path to motherhood. With our informative guides, blogs, books, services, and support, Motherhood Reimagined Tribe is the perfect place to get the advice and support you need to become the mother you want to be. Tribe launches early next year, but I'm currently looking for founding members to join one of 3 Tribe masterminds. These masterminds are small, intimate groups of women who are at the same stage of the journey as you. To begin with, I'll have a group of thinkers and triers, egg donor or embryo support, and solo pregnancy. As a founding member of Tribe Mastermind, you will not only get preferred pricing, you will get access to a huge content vault for information for every stage of the journey, weekly group calls with me to go over relevant topics and connect to others in your stage, and a community forum to connect with others at any time. This will be the cheapest price ever available, so don't miss your chance to join at this rate. If you're feeling really alone and isolated or get easily overwhelmed by the amount of information and decisions you have to make sure you don't miss this chance to connect with other women and get access to tons of research that's already been done for you. Head on over to the Motherhood Reimagined website or follow the link in the show notes to apply for your spot as a founding member. If you liked today's episode, please head over to iTunes or Stitcher to subscribe and leave a review. I so appreciate your support to spread the word about this project. And finally, if you'd like to hear more about my journey, please read my memoir, Motherhood Reimagined, When Becoming a Mother Doesn't Go as Planned. It's available everywhere books are sold. Next week, we talk with Gail Sexton Anderson, CEO and founder of Donor Concierge, as she shares her wisdom and insight about picking an egg donor or gestational carrier. I can't wait for you to listen. Bye for now.